And our leading story at this hour comes in from the United States, as the U.S. State Department has issued a statement on its assessment of the situation between India and Pakistan and has claimed credit yet again for de-escalating tensions. U.S. State Department spokesperson Robert Palladino has said that the United States continues to urge both India and Pakistan to take steps to de-escalate the existing situation that arose after February 14th Pulwama terror attack. He said that the United States reiterates its call for Pakistan to abide by its UNSC commitments to deny terrorists any sanctuary and to block their access to all funds.
The position of the United States is we continue to urge both sides to continue to take steps to de-escalate the situation, and that includes through direct communication. And we believe strongly that further military activity will exacerbate the situation. So we reiterate our call for Pakistan to abide by its United Nations Security Council commitments, to deny terrorist sanctuary, and to block their access to funds.
Now, the State Department has said that the U.S., the State Secretary of the United States, Mike Pompeo, led the diplomatic engagement directly, which played an essential role in de-escalating the tensions between the two sides.
This happened in Hanoi last week, actually. Secretary Pompeo led diplomatic engagement directly, and that played an essential role in de-escalating the tensions between the two sides. He spoke with leaders in both countries, and that included the Indian Minister of External Affairs, Swaraj, National Security Advisor Doval, and Pakistani Foreign Minister Qureshi.
Questioned on the misuse of F-16 by Pakistan, Palladino said that the U.S. continues to look into, however, refused to publicly comment on defense technologies or the communications that the U.S. has with other countries.
India has, on use of F-16 by Pakistan, State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad said it is looking for more information on that, either in potential misuse of F-16 by Pakistan, and what information you are seeking from?
So we're taking a look, and we're going to continue to.
And to bring us more perspective on the latest developments, I'm joined in by our correspondent Daniel Renches, who joins me live from Washington, D.C. for more on this. Daniel, a very warm welcome to you on Wion. Now, Pakistan is finally acting against the terror groups Jaish-e-Mohammed, Jamaat al-Dawa as well, its charity front as well. Now, Masood Azhar's son and brother are also under preventive detention. But is this enough? And is United States convinced by these actions taken by Pakistan, since bans have taken place in the past, but clearly nothing has changed?
Well, I think the reference made during that briefing to UN Security Council resolutions points to the possibility that the US is willing to essentially put more pressure on Pakistan, not only bilaterally, but internationally, in order to make progress on this particular issue. And I think, it's been said by commentators that there's very much of a definitive effort by the United States to become a little bit more activist on these issues than previous administrations. So it's unclear how much political capital the Americans are willing to expend on this. They also have to play things carefully because they have their own interests in the region. But I do get a sense in which they are willing to expend a considerable amount of diplomatic energy, both publicly and privately, in order to try to tackle some of these deep underlying issues.
Right. Daniel, you rightly mentioned that this government is more interested in taking a more active role in diplomacy. But I would like to ask you, how would United States define de-escalation, considering it is Pakistan perpetuating terrorism by harboring terror groups like Jaish and the LAT? Shouldn't US now focus on blacklisting Masood Azhar at the UN?
I think that the United States is, obviously interested in being active in combating terrorist groups in any country in which it's perceived there is a threat. I think that goes without question. And I think that there is probably going to be more efforts to isolate and identify and sanction some of these groups. The Trump administration has many different things going on across the world, and sometimes there's a lack of focus if nothing in particular is happening on the news agenda. So I think the fact that we've had this dangerous escalation probably has focused minds in Washington considerably on this particular set of complex diplomatic issues. So yes, I think we're going to see more public displays of diplomacy in action and more private efforts as well. And I think there's going to be also, I detect, an effort to separate out the issue of Pakistan's actions on terrorist groups and the issue of Kashmir and the tensions between India and Pakistan, and a real effort to continue to persuade both sides not to escalate.
Right, Daniel, I was quite intrigued to, hear Mr. Palladino when he said that there are private efforts also being made. I would like to know, what did he mean by these private efforts?
Well, because they're private, we don't have a huge amount of information on that. But I would suggest this. Look, Pakistan, the Americans have made some efforts to distance themselves from the previous sort of closeness of the American administrations with Pakistan. You've seen a reduction in aid, for example, as a way of pressuring them. But at the same time, there's an effort here to reach a deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan. So to some degree, the Pakistanis will be useful and important in those continuing efforts. So it's always going to be a diplomatic dance. They do not want to get in the middle of a fight between Pakistan and India. They want to ensure that there is no further escalation, not least because there is concern about the fact that these are two nuclear armed states. So I think by saying it's private, I think that reflects the understanding and signals the understanding that this is going to require subtle and complex and accurate diplomacy in order to resolve. And one of the issues I think they probably don't want to do is get President Trump too much involved. We saw in Hanoi him making some statements about the possibility of bringing peace to Kashmir. Maybe that is an overarching goal. But it's a very ambitious goal, and I think diplomats are not going to want to overplay the bluster at this stage.
All right, rightly said that diplomats will not be overplaying the bluster. Also, while Pakistan is beginning to crack down on terrorism, going by Mr. Palladino's comments on Mike Pompeo's de-escalation efforts, will it be fair to credit United States for the current efforts of the Pak government?
That remains to be seen. Clearly, the Americans are wanting to signal here that they are very concerned about this issue. They have also indicated a strong desire to create a much stronger relationship with India on strategic and economic issues. Part of that, of course, is an effort to counter the strong power dominance in the region of China. So there is a lot of pragmatism involved in all of this. And the fact that they are now signaling that they're playing an integral role in South Asian politics suggests that, they do want to play the game to some extent. But they have to be careful not to overplay that hand, clearly.
Right. They have to be careful, very rightly said. Daniel, my last question to you. Since the State Department spokesperson refused to comment on Pakistan's misuse of F-16, suggesting it would be a violation of a bilateral agreement involving U.S. defense technologies, is there a possibility of United States taking any action at all, despite India having provided concrete evidence?
Well, the action that they typically take would be either to just suspend any future military engagement or potentially to stop providing training and the resupply of equipment. So that remains in the toolbox of possible leverage. But as I say, they're not going to be wanting to be in the business of alienating Pakistan too much. So it's a matter of finding the balance. And if Pakistan is showing signs that it's willing to take action and to willingly distance itself from these terrorist groups and cooperate with American intelligence and military efforts, then I think that could lead, to a bureaucratic front in which they continue to supply Pakistan with military equipment. But at the moment, I think they're probably going to quite rightly hold off and see how things develop.
Very rightly mentioned. US actually cannot afford a complete alienation of Pakistan, and that it has to be a very delicate balance that the United States has to maintain between India and Pakistan. Thank you so much, Daniel, for bringing us your precious perspective and joining us live from Washington, D.C. on Wion.